When Samantha left, she took the scent of lilacs with her. It was the perfume she always wore, the one I used to love catching on her skin after a long day. But when she walked out that door, holding her designer suitcase and her secrets, the smell became something else entirely. Bitter, suffocating. It hung in the air for days after she was gone, like the ghost of everything I thought we had. We'd been bound together by love, or at least that's what I thought it was. A spark in a park one brisk October afternoon. I remember the way she looked at me, her bright scarf catching in the breeze as she laughed at something I said. Me, Matthew Green, just a guy from Queens who worked 9 to 5 pushing papers, somehow catching the attention of Samantha Waverly. She was breathtaking, not just her face, though that was impossible to ignore, but the way she carried herself, confident, sharp, like she belonged in some glossy ad selling champagne. We couldn't have been more different. Her world was penthouses and gala dinners. Mine was a one-bedroom walk-up and Saturday beers with friends. She told me she wanted something else. "I need to breathe," she'd said one night, her voice soft, her hands twisting the pearls around her neck like they were a choke chain. She hated her father's shadow, his disapproval of every choice she made. She said she saw freedom in me, a life where she wasn't just Waverly's daughter. I believed her. We eloped a month later, just the two of us at City Hall. No family, no friends, just a quick signature and a kiss. For a while it was electric. She learned to ride the subway, started cooking us terrible dinners in our tiny kitchen, and swore off her father's money. I'd catch her dancing with a mop or singing off-key while doing laundry, and I thought, this is it. This is love. But the cracks were always there, weren't they? Small things. The way her laugh faded when my paycheck wasn't enough to fix the car. The way her hand tensed in mine when we passed department store windows full of things we couldn't afford. It wasn't long before she started making little calls, borrowing just for emergencies from her father, then paying it back when I wasn't looking. I didn't mind. I thought she was trying. What I didn't see coming was Brad, or Chad, or whatever his name was. The banker with the custom suits and the corner office. I found out about him late, years too late. She'd been hiding him like an ace in a card game she knew she'd lose. And when she told me, it wasn't even with shame. "He said you're holding me back," she'd said one night after putting Emma to bed. Her voice was cold, like the Samantha I knew was gone. "He's right, Matt. I can't keep living this lie. I'm not built for this life." That's when it all spilled out. Brad had convinced her that I was a failure, that she deserved better, that she shouldn't drag a loser's bastard into their world. His words. Not hers, she claimed. But they might as well have been hers. After all, she agreed. I didn't scream, didn't beg. I just stared at her and said, "Get out." The rest was a blur, her packing, her leaving, her not even bothering to look back at the baby we'd made together. 2 years later, here I am. Calm, composed, but still angry in ways I can't explain. I've buried myself in Emma, in work, in the rhythm of getting through the days. Samantha? She's a ghost to me now. And then Annabelle walked into our lives, a quiet girl with a kind face. She couldn't have been more different from Sam or anyone in her world. I wasn't looking for help when she answered my ad, but for some reason, she stayed. That's where the story really begins. Annabelle. Just saying her name feels strange now, like I've unearthed a treasure I didn't know was buried right under my nose. She wasn't anything like the women I'd known, or thought I'd known. She was 24, fresh-faced and practical. She had this way of slipping into a room like a soft breeze, unobtrusive but always noticed. She wore simple clothes, clean, plain, and free of the flash that had always surrounded Samantha. She didn't care about labels, didn't carry herself like the world owed her anything. When she first came to the apartment, Emma took to her instantly. Kids are good like that. They can spot a kind heart a mile away. Annabelle was gentle, patient, and knew just how to make Emma's tantrums melt away like snow in spring. I wasn't sure what to think of her at first. She kept her head down, did her job, and didn't talk much unless I asked her something. There was no drama, no overstepping, no airs about her. It was refreshing even if I couldn't fully relax around her. Trust wasn't something I handed out freely anymore, not after Sam. But over time, Annabelle became part of the routine. She'd hum little songs while tidying up, leave drawings Emma made on the fridge for me to find, and never complained about the long hours. She didn't charge much either, more proof that she wasn't in it for anything but the work. We started talking more, little by little. Nothing heavy, just the kind of conversation that fills the spaces in a day. She told me she'd moved to New York from a small town upstate, that she had big plans once she saved enough money. I never pressed for details. Honestly, I didn't want to know too much. She wasn't my type and I wasn't hers. She was young, idealistic, and probably had no idea what kind of mess she was stepping into with me and Emma. Still, there was something about her presence that made the apartment feel less empty. For 2 years, I'd been living in a house full of echoes, memories of a life I thought I had, haunting every corner. Annabelle changed that, even if I didn't realize it right away. It's not like I didn't have other options. I'd had a few dates here and there, nothing serious, just enough to remind myself that I was still capable of charm. A single dad with a good smile can still turn a head or two, but every time it felt forced, fake, like I was trying to piece together a new version of myself with duct tape and borrowed time. Then one day, Annabelle started to change. I noticed it first in the way she dressed. Her simple jeans and cardigans were replaced by sleeker outfits, nothing over the top, but there was an effort I hadn't seen before. Her hair, always pulled back in that practical ponytail, began to fall in soft waves around her shoulders. She even started wearing a little makeup, just enough to make her green eyes stand out. I didn't ask questions, none of my business. But something felt different. She seemed lighter, almost glowing. Then she told me. "Matt," she said one evening as we cleaned up Emma's toys together, "I think I'll have to leave soon." The words hit me harder than I expected. I tried to keep my tone even. "Leave? Why?" Her cheeks flushed and she looked away, fiddling with one of Emma's stuffed animals. "I met someone. He's wonderful, and we're getting serious. He wants me to move in with him." "Wow," I said, forcing a smile. "That's great. Really. I'm happy for you." She smiled back, but there was a sadness in her eyes, like she didn't quite believe me. "I'll give you plenty of notice," she said quickly. "I'd never leave you and Emma in the lurch." I nodded, but my chest felt tight. Annabelle was a fixture in our lives, and the thought of losing her, of losing that quiet stability, wasn't something I'd prepared for. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. I told myself it was fine. She was young, had her own life to live, her own dreams to chase. She wasn't mine to hold on to. But something about the way she'd said it lingered, something about the way her voice trembled when she spoke about him. I didn't know it then, but Annabelle's story was about to get much, much messier. Annabelle showed up one evening with her hair wet, her makeup smeared, and her eyes rimmed red. It was raining, but this wasn't the kind of soaked you got from a quick dash in the drizzle. She looked like she'd walked through a storm and lost her way. "Annabelle?" I asked, meeting her at the door. Emma was already asleep and the apartment was quiet except for the hum of the radiator. She didn't answer, just stood there, shivering and clutching her bag like it was the only thing holding her together. "Hey, come in," I said, stepping aside. "What's going on?" That's when she broke. Her shoulders trembled as she let out a sob, loud and raw. Before I could think, she was in my arms, crying like the weight of the world had finally cracked her open. "Annabelle," I said softly, trying to guide her to the couch. "What happened? Talk to me." But she just shook her head. I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't push. Instead, I sat beside her as she cried, waiting for her to speak. But she never did. Not that night. Not the next day. Whatever it was, it followed her like a shadow. She wasn't herself after that. The glow she'd carried the past few weeks dimmed, replaced by something cold, distant. She still cared for Emma, still showed up on time, but the warmth that had once filled the apartment was gone. Every time I asked if she was okay, she'd wave me off with a half-hearted smile and a quick, "I'm fine." But she wasn't. I knew it, and she knew I knew it. Then one evening she surprised me. "Matt," she said hesitantly as we sat at the table after Emma had gone to bed, "can I ask you a favor?" "Of course," I said, trying to hide my surprise. She rarely asked for anything. I need you to come with me to a wedding, she said quickly, her words tumbling out like they were trying to escape her. A wedding? I raised an eyebrow. Whose wedding? A friend's, she said, avoiding my eyes. I don't really have anyone else to go with, and I don't want to go alone. There was something in her voice, something pleading, vulnerable. I wanted to say no. Weddings weren't my thing, not since mine had been nothing but a quiet trip to City Hall and a lifetime of regrets. But the way she looked at me, like she needed me to say yes, made it impossible to refuse. When is it? I asked. Next weekend, she said quickly, relief flooding her face. Thank you, Matt. Really? I nodded, but something about the whole thing felt off. Why would someone like Annabelle, who kept her life so guarded, suddenly want me at a wedding? And why couldn't she go alone? The week passed in a blur of work and parenting, but Annabelle remained quiet, distant. I thought about asking her again what was wrong, but I held back. When the day of the wedding arrived, I put on my best suit, a charcoal gray number I hadn't worn since Samantha left. Annabelle looked stunning in a simple green dress that hugged her figure in ways I'd never noticed before. Her hair was swept up, her makeup understated but perfect. For a moment, I forgot all the strangeness of the past week and just stared. You clean up nice, I said, trying to lighten the mood. She gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The venue was grand, the kind of place where chandeliers sparkled like diamonds and the waitstaff moved silently, like shadows. The kind of place Samantha would have loved. And then I saw her. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but no, it was her, Samantha, standing at the center of the room in a white dress that cost more than my car. She looked as radiant and untouchable as the day I met her, but this time, there was no illusion. My chest tightened and I turned to Annabelle, my voice sharp. What is this? Why are we here? Annabelle froze, her face pale. She didn't answer. I looked back at Samantha and that's when I saw him. Brad. Chad. Whatever his name was. Standing beside her, his hand on her waist, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. This is their wedding? I hissed, my voice low but furious. Annabelle nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. How do you know them? I demanded. She opened her mouth to speak but closed it just as quickly, looking away. I should have walked out. I should have grabbed my coat and left without looking back. But something made me stay. Maybe it was the anger simmering in my chest, the need to see how far Samantha had fallen, or risen, depending on how you looked at it. And maybe, just maybe, it was the suspicion gnawing at the edges of my mind. Whatever was going on here, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The reception was a dazzling spectacle, everything Samantha always dreamed of, wealth, status, and adoration wrapped in a bow. But I wasn't focused on her or her new groom anymore. Annabelle had vanished. One moment she was standing beside me, stiff and distracted, and the next, she was gone. Something wasn't right. I felt it in my gut. The grand staircase leading to the upper floors was roped off, but I didn't care. Ignoring curious glances, I slipped past the velvet rope and made my way upstairs. The hallways were dimly lit, muffling the sounds of the laughter and music below. I moved quietly, unsure what I was looking for until I heard it, a low, familiar laugh. It was Brad's. My jaw tightened as I followed the sound to a partially open door. Inside, the scene hit me like a slap. Brad and Annabelle tangled together in the bed, their movements hurried and reckless. Annabelle looked conflicted, her face flushed with tears and passion, but Brad's expression was all smug satisfaction. "You're a star, Annabelle," he murmured, his voice thick with desire. "Do you know that? My star." I froze, anger boiling in my chest, but I stayed silent, pulling my phone from my pocket. I hit record, the red light blinking like a beacon of vindication. "I can't keep doing this," Annabelle said, her voice breaking. "You said you'd leave her, you promised." Brad chuckled darkly, brushing her hair from her face. "Leave her? Annabelle, don't be naive. Samantha's not just my wife. She's my ticket." Annabelle stiffened, but he continued, his tone condescending. "She's from one of the most powerful families in the state," he said, his lips curling into a smirk. "With her by my side, I can get into politics, climb the ranks. I'll be unstoppable." "Then why?" Annabelle began, but he silenced her with a finger to her lips. Because she's a plank in bed, he said with a derisive laugh. Every time I touch her, it's like lying with a corpse. She's cold, boring, completely lifeless. He leaned closer to Annabelle, his voice dropping to a whisper. But you're fire. You're passion. You make me feel alive. Samantha could never do that. Annabelle turned her head, her eyes welling with tears, but he held her chin, forcing her to look at him. You don't understand, my star, he said, his voice soft but cruel. You don't need to be my wife. That's not your role. You're better than that. You'll be my number one, my mistress, the one I come to when I need real love. Her tears fell freely now, her body trembling beneath him. Don't cry, he said with a mocking grin, brushing her cheek. You'll always have me, Annabelle, just not the way you thought. I'd heard enough. My hands were shaking as I stopped the recording and slipped away, heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to storm in there to tear Brad off her and beat him senseless, but I knew there was something more powerful than fists. This was my moment, my chance to burn their perfect little world to the ground. Back downstairs, I found a quiet corner and edited the footage on my phone, quickly adding a prelude, a soft, saccharine video I found online about trust, love, and family values. It was so cloyingly sweet it would make even Samantha's crowd lean in with a warm glow. And then, halfway through, it would flip into the sordid truth. The timing had to be perfect. I made my way to the DJ booth. He was busy, preparing the next track, but I caught his attention. Hey, I said, keeping my voice casual. I've got a special video for the bride, a surprise from a friend. Can you play it during the toast? The DJ nodded. Sure thing. I sent him the edited video and attached a quick message. A special video for the bride, a surprise from a friend. Play it during the toast. I stepped back into the crowd, finding a spot near the edge of the room. Samantha was radiant, laughing with her guests, her arm looped through Brad's. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. The music faded and the DJ announced the special video. The room quieted as the lights dimmed, the screen flickering to life. It started innocently enough with soft music and cheerful graphics about love, trust, and family. Guests smiled, leaning in, some even dabbing at their eyes. Samantha, ever the actress, pressed a hand to her chest, her face glowing with pride. And then, the video shifted. The music cut out, replaced by muffled voices. Brad's words filled the room like poison. She's a plank in bed, boring, lifeless. But you, Annabelle, you're fire. The gasps came quickly, followed by murmurs and a few shocked exclamations. Samantha's smile crumbled, her face going pale as she turned to Brad. You don't need to be my wife, Brad's voice continued. That's not your role. You're better than that. You'll be my number one, my mistress. Chaos erupted. Samantha's scream pierced the air, a guttural sound of betrayal and rage. Brad tried to stammer an excuse, but it was drowned out by the murmurs and accusations flying from every corner of the room. I stayed in the shadows, watching the scene unfold. Samantha finally spotted me just as I was slipping toward the exit. Our eyes met for a brief moment, hers wide with shock, filled with surrender. I left without looking back. The aftermath was swift. Samantha and Brad's marriage didn't survive the week. The video went viral after someone leaked it, don't ask me how, and Brad's career crumbled under the weight of public scandal. I used the momentum to take back control of my life. I filed for sole custody of Emma and won easily. Samantha didn't even fight. The court stripped her of her parental rights, citing her complete absence from Emma's life. I left New York shortly after, taking a new job in Chicago and starting fresh. Annabelle? She disappeared from my life as quietly as she'd entered it. I don't blame her. We both needed a clean slate. Now it's just me and Emma, and for the first time in years I feel free. Free from Samantha's shadow, free from the pain of betrayal. I look at my daughter every day and know she's my world, my purpose. And I'm happy. Finally, I'm happy.